Hi, everybody. It's the Stratosphere Lounge, episode 32, and if things look like they're new and improved, it's because things are new and improved. It's almost like we're taking seriously. We've got brand new lights, which we can adjust the color of. I've got a mic stand. I have the questions printed out in advance. Just as one time, I didn't have to come hauling through traffic at the last minute, and it looks like we actually have a show to do. Besides, I don't suppose at this point I have to say, that when you're the hottest asterisk conservative in America, white, you have a certain standard that you have to live up to, and so needless to say, you have to kind of up the game a little bit. And thank you very much for our friends over at Politichicks, who just gave all of us just so much fun. You know, they always do the hottest women in the conservative circles, and then Politichicks decided to do the hottest men. And we set up an email list. I mean, the second this thing broke, there was like an email list that one of our PJ TV producers, Laura Swisher, sent out a note and said that basically the entire PJ TV lineup made the top 10 or something. Scotty Ott immediately posted that he was made it as the third hottest host of Trifecta. He's a sweet man. I do love that boy. So anyway, here we are. So we're all set to do episode 32, and episode 32 is the 5-question episode. And a couple people said, why 5 questions? And the answer is, because it amuses me. Yes, it amuses me. So 5 questions this week. And then we'll work our way down. And then we'll get to the point where we're going to be doing 4 questions, then 3, then 2, then 1. Then you can always say, how can it be a 1-question show, Bill? And I thought about this because obviously there's only 5 questions, right? Who, what, when, where, why, 6, and how. But I figured you might put America, ? See how it would work? We'll get there. So let's get rolling. Let's not waste any more time. So, David Schnabel and Joshua Arguin, I try to generally take these questions, by the way, in the order in which they're posted, but if they are related, I'll cluster them together, and these two are clustered together. Both guys wanted to know, you should have questions in the form of a haiku, and I might do that next week, or we'll do it after the one-word question. I might do it next week. Thought about doing it this week. A haiku, as you know, is a Japanese poem, a very specific number of syllables and lines, and they're hard to compose. Well, hard to compose a good one, like anything else of writing or literature. It's easy to write stuff. It's just writing the good stuff that's hard. So maybe we'll do a haiku week. I love that kind of stuff. I just think it's just fantastic. Everybody's saying, did I mean words? What did I say? 5 sentences? 5 words. 5 words, what I meant to say. So we got a bunch of questions here, and let's get going. I was hoping that this person might be sitting in. I don't know if they are or not. If not, I'll send them a link to the YouTube thing, because Barbara Kearns Aubrey wants to know, what can I alone change? And before I get to that question, let me just say this. Barbara Kearns Aubrey, when I knew her a few years ago, was just Barbara Kearns. And Barbara Kearns was in the theater department at the University of Florida. And I think I can say this with some confidence. I know I was not alone in this belief. Barbara Kearns was simply the most beautiful person I've ever seen in my life. She just is and was stunning. Stunning. And you combine that with actual genuine talent. I think she was probably the best actress in the department. And at a time when I was at my absolute lowest, when I was at my geekiest, my most miserable, my most unhappy, she was just luminous, and everybody, including the professors, including the gay professors, were just madly in love with her. Everybody had the biggest crush on her, and I did too. And she was very kind to me, and we were friends. We hung out and went around together, and now she watches the Stratosphere Lounge. So, Barb, you are a wonder. Those of you out there who are soap opera fans, and don't hold me to this because it's been about 20 years since I actually heard this, but she played Nina for a while. I think it was Nina on All My Children. She was the first famous person I ever knew. She was, we were out on the street one night. I was working in a nightclub. We were out on the street one night. I was working in a nightclub in Miami Beach. I was doing the lasers and the lights and the videos. And Barb came down to visit, and she was doing All My Children up in New York. That's the first time I ever got stopped on the street by somebody. I said, "Are you Nina?" I said, "Yes, I am." spectacularly talented, beautiful person, very kind, very lovely, kind to me, and just so proud to be a friend of hers and so proud to know her then and so proud to know her now. So Barbara Kearns Aubrey asked a question that I think is probably one of the most profound questions we've ever had here. What can I alone change in this world that seems to be going to the devil? I think the answer, Barb, is everything. Everything. I think that's really how we have to think about things. We are the masters of our own destiny, and the choices that we make as individuals are translated into the choices that we make as a society and as a culture and as a civilization. It makes history. Our individual choices make history. I said this on the road a lot when I was on the road first half of the year, that Winston Churchill, who I've been doing an awful lot of reading about, basically made a decision every day to get up and defy the Germans, defy Hitler. He had no reason to believe that he could win. Certainly the British had been just completely, utterly overwhelmed. All of Europe had fallen to the Nazis. But Churchill believed he could beat them. And every morning he woke up and got out there on the rubble and gave the big V for victory and said, we're going to destroy these people. Their victory is inevitable. We will fight them on the beaches. I've said this many times. But really what it comes down to is, what can I alone change? And one of the things I think that we can ask ourselves is, what do we do to feed this beast? How much compliance do we go with this giant monstrosity? It seems to me to be collapsing under its own weight. It really genuinely does. Obamacare has been pushed back another 2 years. It's a catastrophe. I'd like to have people start feeling some pain now for the decisions that they made. But I don't want anybody, it's a hard thing to say. It's like I don't want Americans to suffer. But I do think if you vote for a policy, you ought to, pay the price for your voting decision. So, what we can change, Barb, is we can change the way we think, we can change the way we vote, but the one thing we have to change, I think, constantly is we have to change this idea that this thing is inevitable. We have to change the idea that decline is inevitable. We have to change the idea that these people are unbeatable. We have to change this idea that we can't win this thing, because we can, and we're going to. I know it seems hard to believe, but it's true. I spent 4 weeks out of the city. I was up in Idaho. I won't say where, because the last thing I want to do is have a mob of Angelinos, especially, and Californians generally, moving up to this place. But I'll tell you something. This country is so fundamentally sound once you get out of the metropolitan areas. It's just so fundamentally sound. So what we can change is we can change our behaviors. We can get out and vote. We can do more volunteering for Get Out the Vote programs. We can rally around a candidate, even if he's not a good candidate. And we'll get to that in a minute, because we got a couple questions about third parties and things like that. We can change any number of things. But I think the one thing we have to change is this idea, each individually in our own hearts, that somehow that this decline is inevitable, and that that these people are going to win by default, and there's nothing we can do to stop them. One of the things somebody pointed out to me, sent me a quote from Ayn Rand, and it was basically talking about how impotent their philosophy is, and how impotent they are, how they depend on our acquiescence. These are people, our political opponents, who are destroying this country through collectivism. These are people, look at Joe Biden, look at Barack Obama. Barack Obama was the only president of the Harvard Law Review never to write a law review, and I accepted that explanation for the first 4 years of his presidency, and it's only until very recently that I just took a look at that and said, that doesn't make any sense. Why would it be that they would have their first black president of the Harvard Law Review not write any law reviews? Doesn't make any sense. I just accepted it, and I knew it was a fact because it is a fact. Then it suddenly hit me like a lightning bolt. Of course he wrote law reviews. They just weren't published because they were so awful. Because they were just so awful. He's not a very smart guy. He's not just, people have called him an affirmative action president. I read an article that's much, much, much more on point. He's not so much an affirmative action president, although that is what allows him to get away with what he gets away with, is his skin color. It's just that simple. Let's just come out and say it. But what he really is he's the first of the self-esteem movement presidents. He's a guy who's been told all his life he's bright, he's brilliant, he's wonderful, he's magnificent, he's so articulate. Oh, he's so incredibly well-read, and he's such a great speaker and all this, but he's not. He's mediocre. I think he has an IQ of 108, something like that, You can tie his shoes. But he's not the guy he thinks he is. That's why in this article, I can't remember who wrote it, but that's why in the article He'll constantly compare himself to Lincoln. He compares himself to Lincoln because he has no idea who Lincoln was and what Lincoln did. That's why he gets away with it. So hang in there, Barb. You especially, darling, because I owe you a lot. But all of us can change our behaviors, and all of us can change the way we feel about things. But don't give up. That's the most important thing. Now, because we have 5-word questions tonight, there's a lot of them, and they're brief, and that means I can fire through them. And frankly, after that one, because I thought that one was very important, profound question, I'm going to try and up the pace a little bit and kind of plow through some of these. So otherwise, we'll be here till the sun comes up. And that's just not good entertainment. So here we go. Great question, Barb. It's always so good to see your name there. It really means a lot to me. Moving on. Let's get the geeky sci-fi stuff out of the way. For those of you that are not fans, we'll try to get it all done as quickly as possible. So David Buckner wants to know, did you watch Omega Glory this 4th? For those of you who are not in the know, Omega Glory was a Star Trek episode. It was one of the worst episodes ever. Frankly, it just was terrible. Where they come to a planet, and previously another starship has been to this planet, and the captain of the previous starship to arrive, is teamed up with one of the forces on this planet, the Combs, and he's been supporting the Combs against these rebel Yangs, and these rebel Yangs have just been, massacring these Combs, and they're fighting this resistance movement. And there's a scene where this demented starship captain, who's there before Kirk gets there, is talking about how we just opened fire with our phasers, and we just vaporized thousands of them. We shot them until our batteries went dead, kind of thing, right? Just vaporized millions of people with phasers. And then the Yangs overrun the compound. They capture Kirk. And they bring out their big sacred like totem, and it's the American flag. And they say the E Plagnista, which is like a badly corrupted version of the Pledge of Allegiance. And I think it was a parallel universe kind of like an independent. It wasn't like somebody else came and gave them the history like they did with the Nazi episode. As I recall, they independently had Yangs, which were Yankees, and Combs, which were communists, and Kirk arrives to find out that the Federation has placed itself on the wrong side of this issue. And then there's a moment where Kirk holds up the American flag, and he tells this Yang leader, he gives him the Pledge of Allegiance in English as it's supposed to be read. And it's just one of the most terribly written episodes ever, but I remember seeing that episode when I was probably 12 or 13, and I just burst into tears, and I went out and bought an American flag that day, and I folded it up into a triangle. So I did not watch the Omega Glory this 4th of July. I wish I had. It was an excellent idea, David. Frank Alvarez wants to know, Star Wars or Star Trek? Should be fairly straightforward by now. The reason I'm a Star Trek guy, Star Trek came out when I was a kid, and Star Wars came out when I was a teen. So timing may have had something to do with it, but I still don't think that would have mattered. I think if I had them both on a table at any point in my life, I would have picked Star Trek over Star Wars, because I think Star Trek is far more, it's a lot deeper, it's a lot more real, it's a more attainable is the word I'm looking for. Star Trek gave you the sense, always gave me the sense, that this was something that we could do if we put our minds to it. These were human beings from Earth who were traveling through the stars and just committing miracles on a daily basis. The fact that Starfleet Command was based in America, that James T. Kirk, the kind of iconic American hero, was born on in Iowa on a farm, means you could get there. And Star Wars never had that for me. I'm willing to grant that Star Wars is a lot more fun, and I'm certainly willing to grant that in a lot of its incarnations, it's a lot more interesting. But I don't buy this Jedi religion thing. And to the degree that I did buy it, Lucas destroyed it in the first trilogies. This idea of midichlorians and all that. We're not going to turn this show into that. But really, so I just think Star Trek is a much better future, even though a lot of people have said it's it got to be kind of a socialist future. It sure wasn't in the original series. In the original series, it was Horatio Hornblower. I'm going to see if they're going to let me repost my Star Trek Afterburner, which I did in 2009, I think, which is my favorite work. It's not the best work I ever did. It's my favorite work, the one I did from the Bridge of the Enterprise. I'll see if they'll let me post that. I should have done it when they released the Star Trek movie. If I'd been thinking, that's what I would have done. But I've always been a Star Trek fan. It's Star Trek over Star Wars by a wide margin. Here's a little interesting twist from both Michael Glanville and Jefferson Tester, who asked Captain Kirk or Malcolm Reynolds. The question's virtually verbatim between those two guys. The truth of the matter is, guys, I was never a huge Firefly fan while it was on the air. Didn't watch it on the air. I haven't seen all the episodes. I kind of dragged myself to go see Serenity, and I loved the movie. Loved it. Went back and watched a couple of episodes. But there's no in my mind there's no comparison between Captain Kirk and Malcolm Reynolds. Mal Reynolds is a great character. He's a great character, a lot like Kirk in a lot of ways. Very independent, very rugged, very kind of an action-oriented guy who, like Kirk, is the will, and he's balancing all these opposing forces in his ship, which is kind of how the psyche works. So I like Mal Reynolds very, very much, but I just never thought he achieved that escape velocity that Kirk achieved. However, I don't know how many episodes they did of Firefly. It was one season. Trek was, 72 episodes, so got to know Kirk a little better than I got to know Mal. However, I did know enough about the Firefly Serenity universe to be able to answer this question from Mark Davick. Zoe, Kaylee, Irana, or River? And my answer is Irana, Kaylee, Zoe, River, in that order. Continuing the Sci-Fi Geek Fest, from Ryan Shanks, wants to know, best sci-fi, Heinlein or Clark? Great question. Let me do that again, sorry. Well, Clark. I read nothing but Clark when I was growing up. I liked Arthur C. Clarke because Arthur C. Clarke's science fiction was like really hard sci-fi, like diamond hard. The definition, I guess, hard sci-fi is very practical and very believable and very technical, as opposed to kind of more escapist stuff. I read a lot of Clarke. 2001 was a great novel, and we'll get back to that in a minute, I think, too. The one based on the moon, where they used like a weapon that was the Earth's molten core. That was fantastic. His Mars story was good. Clarke gives you the idea that all of this stuff is just inevitable and really, really, really phenomenally achievable. Walk into it kind of sci-fi. Heinlein was a much deeper guy. When I say I preferred Clarke for his science fiction. But if we're talking anything about any kind of philosophy or politics, and Heinlein runs away with it. I just think that Clarke was a better science fiction writer. I think Heinlein was more of a political thinker, really. I think Heinlein's on the same level as Ayn Rand. Heinlein is an extremely interesting guy. Here's what I meant to say. Clarke's sci-fi. The follow-up question, last question on the sci-fi thing was from Jennifer Kearns Lechner, who said, "Ever read Rendezvous with Rama?" Rendezvous with Rama is a great example. A Childhood's End is the book I was thinking of. Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke is one of the greatest stories ever written. It has got, without question, the best twist in history. They've been trying to make that movie for 40 years now, and they never have, but Childhood's End is one of the absolutely definitive sci-fi novels. I cannot recommend it highly enough. It has got the greatest twist in the middle. It happens pretty early. And you just run with it. It's a fantastic story. Hasn't ever been made. Rendezvous with Rama, I think there might be some talk about that. Is in production. Maybe somebody's making it. I have a vague memory of that. Another story you can just walk into. So in terms of science fiction, I'm Clarke guy because you feel like you're in a science fiction world. But in terms of the philosophy of the future, in terms of the philosophy and the thought, it's Heinlein in a breakaway win by 8 lengths kind of a thing. Starship Troopers, the movie, was appalling. I actually like the bugs. I like the CG very much, especially given it was 98 or something. But they turned it into a farce because it was written by an anti-American D-bag. They turned the whole thing into a farce, but the entire idea of the mechanized infantry and Heinlein's idea that the only people who get to vote are people who put their lives on the line for their civilization, members of the military primarily, although other members of the civil service, but only the people who actually had skin in the game get to vote. is a powerful idea and a remarkable idea. It might be something we might want to think about, because that was the whole idea of why you had to have property in order to vote, right? A property owner has skin in the game, and if you don't have skin in the game, you can just vote yourself other people's money and vote yourself other people's freedoms too. So, it's Clark for the sci-fi, it's Heinlein for the politics, and that's my answer for that. I think we might be done with the sci-fi thing. I might have missed one. I'll come back if we did. Anyway, moving on to the more serious stuff. Kevin Timothy wants to know, Edward Snowden, hero or traitor? Those are 5 words. Edward Snowden, hero or traitor? I have to preface this by saying the fact is I don't know very much about this case. You would think I would. I don't. I don't know much of the details about this case. So can we just take that as read based on what I'm about to say? I've forgotten the name of this, Bradley Manning, the soldier who was involved with WikiLeaks. I considered him a traitor without any question. I considered him a traitor for a couple reasons. First of all, he's in uniform. He took an oath. Snowden took a security oath. But there's a difference in my opinion. And secondly, Manning struck me as a guy who was leaking secrets to the world about what America was doing to defend itself against foreign powers. So, in the sense that he sold out the American people, I consider Manning to be a traitor. Very clear-cut case for me. Now, Snowden is different for me, because if there's not complications that I'm not seeing, then Snowden is reporting on what the government is doing against the American people. So, I have a pretty simple definition of hero versus traitor. If somebody is a whistleblower and they are leaking secrets and the leakage of those secrets is hurting the American people, selling secrets to the Chinese, you're a traitor. If, on the other hand, you're blowing the whistle about what the government is doing to its own people, then you're a hero, because then you are actually standing up for the American people. The government does not have the right, nothing like the right to do what they're doing. And so I consider him a hero. I consider him a hero for blowing the whistle on a federal government that has been out of control for a long time, and an attorney general who said that the president has the right to launch drone strikes on American citizens without prior trial or even, no rights of habeas corpus, none of it. So I think I would have to say I consider him a hero. There may be aspects to this that I don't understand, but if somebody blows the whistle on behalf of the American people and says, this is what your government is doing to you, okay, I want to know that. And I think that guy is on our team, even if I don't approve of the methods of it. I've had many people say, yeah, but he should have gone to Congress. Well, who's been overseeing this stuff? Somebody's overseeing all of these drone programs and all of this NSA surveillance and all this IRS intimidation. Some committee somewhere, presumably, is overseeing it. So I don't know that going to a congressional committee would have done it. I don't know that having a private meeting with anybody would have done it either. I mean, the whole fact that this stuff is underground is the problem. I was talking with my very good friend, I can't say these words without actually kind of almost choking up about it, but Bert Rutan. I was talking with Bert about this over the 4th of July. And Bert basically said that they should not have asked that of the general who was in charge of the program in open session. They should have asked it in closed session. And I'm beginning to think that that is the problem, is that it's not an open session. I disagreed with Bert. I think this stuff needs to be out in the public, out in the sunlight. So, Kevin, I'm going to go with hero on this one. And again, it's a question of whose side are you on? Are you betraying the American people by leaking these things, or are you alerting the American people? So I know there's a lot of disagreement on this one, but that's how I see it. Eddie Hernandez wants to know, pistols, shotguns, or assault rifles? Yes, please. Eddie Fleischall wants to know, open carry or conceal carry? I don't know enough about open carry. I'll tell you this, though. One of the things I had a kind of a sense of when I was out of town for a while was that open carry is useful in the sense that open carry reminds people that being armed is not only okay, it's actually great. But there's so few open carry, even in California. I know it's not as bad in places like Texas or other parts of the country, but you absolutely never, ever, 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 ever see a person wearing a gun who's not a police officer in this state. Not ever, ever, ever. And it's become so rare. Open carry has become so rare that when you see a guy with a pistol on his belt, even guys like me get a little like, whoa, is this guy okay? And then I have to catch myself. Well, of course he's okay. If he wasn't okay, he wouldn't be wearing a gun on his belt, right? So, I think we should see more open carry, because I think American people should be subjected to the fact that, yes, of course we have the right to defend ourselves, and we should be able to carry our weapons openly. Concealed carry, of course, has a lot of benefits, not the least of which is you don't have to alarm people who are easily alarmable, but most importantly, it's probably good to not let people know. See, this is the issue, isn't it? I guess that's why we got the question, Patty. I never really thought about it before. I think maybe what you're getting at, certainly where I'm kind of going with this, is which is in fact the greater deterrence? Is it more deterring to have people see that you have a gun on your belt, or is it better for that to be a surprise, so to speak? I don't know. I imagine that there's not going to be given a lot of grief to a guy who's walking down the street with a 45. You got a 45 on your belt. You've got a little immunity field that walks around in front of you. There are other times when I can see the ability to have something in a holster that's concealed would be maybe a little more handy. I don't know. But the reason I wanted to do that question was because I do think that we should be able to see more. We should be seeing more of people carrying guns in this country. And if it alarms the French and the Europeans, then so much the better. I think we're going to come back to this kind of issue in a minute. Now we got a whole bunch of questions here that are all related, so I'll just read them off so that the people who wrote them in can get a little bit of screen love. But they're all basically the same question. Well, three of them are, and the fourth one's a variation. Jesse Cobb wants to know, is the Republican Party doomed? Royce Dunbar wants to know, time for a third party bill? Joe Vrola says, is Freedom Party necessary yet? They're all 5 words, and they're all the same issue. And I will say this about that. The Republican, I don't think, I'm speaking for myself here, I don't think the Republican Party is doomed yet, but I will tell you this, if we get somebody like Chris Christie, let's see what happens in 2014 first. If they give us Chris Christie, I said last election, I said, let's get behind Romney, and if it turns out that they give us this and we lose again, then I'm ready to bolt, right? We got to stop this Obama guy. Well, I don't think Obama's going to be in for a third term. I think there are some lines that cannot be crossed. And so it's done. We have to ride it out. And frankly, if we get somebody like Chris Christie or somebody real mushy, it's time to go. I'd rather start a conservative party, or not start. I'd rather be part of a conservative party and take a licking for a while. And that's basically what happened with the Republican Party in its inception. And by the way, let's not forget, for those of us with short historical memories, that the Republican Party was founded in 1856 as a collection of disaffected Whigs and abolitionist-minded Democrats, basically. And they ran in 1856, and they lost with John Fremont. But the Republican Party won the presidency in their second try after 4 years. The actual Republican Party may have started earlier, but the first presidential candidate was 1856 with Fremont, and in 1860 they won. So it wasn't like they had to be out there for 40 years. When there's a pressing social need, that new party, that Republican Party, gained strength so quickly because there were so many people who were ready for it. And I think people are ready for a conservative party. I think we would have wiped Obama out, wiped him out with a conservative candidate. Somebody like this guy. See, that guy would have won big. He won 49 out of 57 states, very impressive number, Mr. Obama, in 1984. He won 45 or 46 states in 1980. We got a real, actual conservative president, and he won big. We ran conservatively in 2010. We ran the Tea Party against Obamacare, huge win for us. And back in January or February of this year, somebody did a poll and said, if Ronald Reagan were to run against Barack Obama today, who would win? And 58% of Americans said Ronald Reagan. And that's with most of those people don't even know who Ronald Reagan was. Half of them weren't even voting when he was president. Ronald Reagan beats Barack Obama today. A Republican who was a conservative will win. A Republican who's not a conservative will split this party. I'm quite sure of it, and I'll be leading that charge. And a conservative party, an actual genuinely conservative party, will probably have to do a cycle or two in the wilderness. And when I say the wilderness, I mean the 30% wilderness, because if you had an actual conservative party, there's a fairly good chance, I really genuinely believe this, that an actual conservative party could win out of the gate, everything out the gate. And we also are getting some feedback from some of the work I do with the people associated with coffee mugs and things of that nature that there is a distinct split now in the GOP between the old school guys like John McCain. It's time to go home, John. And the younger guys like Ted Cruz. The younger guys are much more conservative than the older guys, and the older guys are still paying those Karl Rove kind of consultants. But the younger guys are starting to get it. They're starting to say, no, we got to get in the pop culture. We got to go see movies and speak the language of people. We got to talk to the American people like we're, my buddy Jeremy Boring pinned the ears back on one of these guys. He said, "Does anybody in the Republican Party in Washington have any of them ever been to a movie in the last 5 years? Has any one of them ever downloaded a tune on iTunes ever?" Jeremy makes the point that Barack Obama is more American than Mitt Romney is, which is intended to be a very antagonistic and abrasive thing to say. But Barack Obama can talk about Lady Gaga and George Clooney and all the things that other people talk about. Mitt Romney, you get the sense Mitt Romney hasn't been to the movies in 30 years. Mitt Romney doesn't know who any of these things are that the people actually talk about. So I think a conservative party in 2016 is going to happen. If the Republicans don't get their act together in 2014, it's time, and it may be time before then. I'm in. Anybody who wants to start a serious national party that's a conservative party, I'm up for it. Sarah Palin's been associated with a lot of this. Let me say this about that. I admire her enormously. I really do. I wrote a defense of her early, and my buddy Andrew Breitbart showed it to her, and he told me that she really loved it, and I think the world of her. I think she's very courageous. But I think if we're going to start a conservative party that has a chance to really make a dent, I'd like to start with some fresh faces, guys like Ted Cruz and Rand Paul and a couple of these other people. I think we really need to get out of the gate with a clean look and a clean start, which brings me to the fourth of these questions. David Talbot wrote, Tea Party becomes Patriot Party, and I don't wish to disagree with you, David, but I'm going to disagree with you. Because, first of all, Tea Party's the worst name ever. It's just the worst name ever. Alan West, yes, Melody Grace, Alan West, my buddy Alan West, he could get out there, he'd take these people apart. I think the entire Tea Party name is terrible. I think Patriot Party is terrible. I've given this little talk before. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. I've got a lot of ground to cover, but let me just say this. I would rename this movement, this Tea Party movement. I wouldn't call it the Patriot Party. I would do nothing to go back to our ancestors or any of that stuff, because most people, including all young people, look at people dressed in tri-corner hats holding the muskets and the waistcoats and everything, and they look at these people and they say, this is a joke, right? This is 300 years ago. If they know 270 some a year, they don't know. It just looks ridiculous to them. Tea Party sounds like something that old ladies sit around and do. And when you explain to them about patriots, they just don't get it. They don't get it. Now, that's a tragedy, and it's not something to be proud of, but we have to accept the reality of it. David, I proudly consider myself a patriot. I'd wear a tri-corner hat and hold a musket any day. And when I see somebody dressed that way, I understand why they're dressed that way. I know what it means, and I admire them. But I would change the name of this to the Rebel Alliance, even though George Lucas probably owns it. So if you call yourselves the Rebel Alliance, or something like that, what you're doing is you're instantly going to what Americans are programmed for. They're programmed to love the underdog. And after 40 years of collectivist indoctrination, this again, Jeremy Boring speaking here, but basically Jeremy says that the message that everybody gets now is that the underdog is automatically right. That any contrast between the weak and the strong, the weak is automatically morally correct. So if it's a Palestinian throwing a rock at an Israeli, the Israeli is the bad guy, Israeli in a tank. The Israeli is a bad guy. The Palestinian is a good guy by definition of the fact that the Palestinian is the weaker of the two parties. Now the Palestinians blow up, children's parties, and Israeli doctors treat them in the order in which they come in. There's no moral equivalency between the between the Palestinians and the Israelis, except for the fact that people have been indoctrinated. Any battle between rich and poor, the poor are automatically morally superior. Black and white, blacks are morally superior. Women and men, women are morally superior. And this is how the culture has been set up. So if you call yourself the Rebel Alliance, what you've really done is, first of all, you've co-opted part of the culture. Everybody wants to be part of the Rebel Alliance. The opposite of the Rebel Alliance is the empire. Imperialism is bad. So who has the big state? It's not us, it's them. And so I would say to young people, we want to start a conservative club in our high school. I've said this before, I won't waste a lot of time with it. I would say don't call it the Conservative Club. Say at 4 p.m. in room 614, the meeting of the Rebel Alliance will be held. What is the Rebel Alliance? It's a political thing. What are your politics? What do you mean? Are you liberal or conservative? We're not liberal or conservative. We're not Republican or Democrat. We believe in what works. Everything out there is a mess. It's falling apart. We want solutions. If you can get people to think like that and think about practical solutions, then you're talking about cause and effect. And then you're talking about cause and effect, we win. If you're talking about what works and what doesn't work, we win. You look at the history of what the Democrats have done to black culture, it's a catastrophe. It's a catastrophe. Yeah, brown coats unite, exactly. Let's misbehave. It's whatever you want to call it, I'm in. But it needs to be something new. It needs to be something fresh. And one of the little lines sometimes I come up with that I just like because it captures something. I think that this new political party ought to deliver. The little catchphrase, little like bumper sticker that I like a lot is red meat conservatism delivered in Helvetica. Now, some people will know what I mean by that instantly. For those of you that don't, Helvetica is a type font that's very clean. It's very elegant, very crisp, and it's very graphically sharp. And everything in the world that is hip is in Helvetica. If you were to put together a conservative party and all of their ads and all of their graphics and all of their other stuff look like an Apple ad, it'd be over. That's where we have to go. I think we have to get rid of the red, white, and blue bunting. I love red, white, and blue. I live it, you know. You don't have to convince me. But I think if you were to come out with black letters on white and just go at this in kind of an Apple clean Helvetica hip, not phony, not pandering, not laying down the fat beats for the kids, kind of kids KIDZ kind of thing, not going there, but just kind of coming out and saying, no, this is not the philosophy of the past, the philosophy of the future. It's the philosophy that works. That could win big. So red meat conservatism delivered in Helvetica. That's the answer, in my opinion. Moving on. Barbara Russell wants to know, fast women or hot cars? Both. They're made for each other, Barbara. That's why we have them. We have hot women to sit in our fast cars, and we have fast cars so that we can escort our hot women around. And that's what life is all about, and I don't see why I should have to pick. And I don't. So that's that one. Dave Barnhart wants to know, what's the plan now? Dave, I don't know what the plan is. I know the plan is just consists of every individual person thinking of an alternative to this. I believe this parallel structures is the answer. I believe homeschooling is the answer to this god-awful nightmare of teachers' unions. I think everywhere we look, we can find examples of smaller is better. I went up and got a briefing on private health care, where rather than paying, the average American, for example, pays about $20,000 a year in health care costs. Right now it's through private insurance, but basically they pay out an average of $20,000 a year, and they get back about $5,000 worth of health care. Where's the rest of it go? Well, a lot of it goes into insurance company overhead. A lot of the insurance companies bill the hospitals, so the hospitals end up charging, the $20 aspirin. A pill of aspirin is $20. Reason Magazine did something on healthcare at this hospital where they basically compared a surgery center that had taken the outrageous step of listing their prices. And they compared it to another hospital where they found out that this one hospital charged something like $320 for 75 cents worth of drugs. And so when you peel all this away, just as an example of what the plan is now, Dave, if you look at healthcare in America right now, it's a catastrophic tripod. It's a three-legged monster where these three legs are bound together, and every single day they get more and more entangled. And the three legs are the government, the insurance companies, and the healthcare providers. But when you get down to brass tacks, the only ones of them that really matter are the healthcare providers or the hospitals. Now, hospitals have financial incentives, and they have financial incentives to run up the bills to the insurance company. The rates, what the hospital charges for a surgery, changes. It's never the same. Depends on the insurance company. Depends on all this stuff, and the government's in there messing everything up, and you got to just break the cycle completely. So I got a briefing on what it would be like if individuals were to form chapters and they were to take the money that they're currently paying for healthcare, put it into a private account that would be used to pay the routine stuff out of pocket, because health insurance is unlike any other kind of insurance. You have car insurance, and your car insurance is there to protect you against a collision, something major damage that you cannot afford to fix. Can't write a check for $6,000 or $3,000 to fix this car. So I write a check every month for $300 to cover big damage to the car. But they have something called a deductible. That's usually at least $200-$300, often $500. Why? Well, the reason they have a deductible in car insurance is because that way, if you get a scratch on your car, a little tiny little scratch, you drive past a tree or something, someone puts a scratch on your car door. If you had full coverage without a deductible, your car would be in a car shop and it would have hundreds and hundreds of dollars worth of repair work done to eliminate that little scratch. Why not? You've got full coverage, right? So the reason there's a deductible is because the insurance company is saying, no, you're going to handle the small stuff. Now, in health insurance, what that would look like is, as opposed to these full coverage things, somebody gets a sore throat, they go to the doctor, and it's a copay. And so the doctor has to deal with the insurance companies, has to deal with all the government regulations. So the visit for the sore throat that used to cost $35 is now billed to the insurance company for $200 or $300 or whatever. And all these costs go up through the ceiling, and it's got to stop. So this plan is, you would take this money, you would buy something called stop-loss insurance, which is much more like collision insurance. And basically your stop-loss insurance would say, if I have healthcare needs that are greater than $10,000, this will kick in. But below $10,000, I'm paying into this fund. And these guys broke it down for me into these chapters and stuff with a kind of a shared risk, but it's not exactly an insurance company. It's more like a co-op. It's the difference between a bank and a credit union where everybody's kind of keeping their own money. Then these chapters negotiate with the hospitals. They pay cash. They get great rates because they're bargaining en masse. They're putting large amounts of money on the table, and they drive the cost down. That way, it's in the hospital's interest to, rather than having somebody come in and say, I've got a sore throat, it's in their interest to have either a telephone line that talks to a doctor or a nurse or something like we're doing now with, here's my baby, he's crying, and a doctor or a nurse would say, is this the case, this? Yes, it's colic, you don't have to worry. But is he getting this? Yes. That might be something else. Better bring him in. It's in their interest to keep people out of the hospital and not run up the bills. It's very complicated, and my job is to try and make it simple. But the fact of the matter is, there are any number of plans that get power and money and complexity out of the system and drive it down to the consumer. And the great thing about this healthcare plan is that this money accrues. And if you don't have any catastrophic problems, next thing you know, you're 45 years old and you've got $300,000 or something like this. By the time you retire, and actually the bottom line, and I'm getting a little off on this, but this is the best answer I have for what's the plan now. In this model, let's say you're 89 or 90 years old, and you've been paying into your own fund, and there is catastrophic stop-loss insurance to protect you from the big bills. But basically, you've been paying cash for your medical needs, and you end up keeping more than you spend. And I looked at these models, and basically it comes a point where at the end of your life, you may have $300,000, $400,000 in an account here. And this is what the doctor said to me. Then you would be presented with a choice, which you don't get today. You don't get this choice with insurance companies, but you would be presented as an individual citizen, adult, grown-up. You're 90 years old, and you have a $300,000, let's say, in this account. And a doctor will tell you basically this, because this happens every single day. The doctor will tell you that the end-of-life costs are so staggering. He will basically say to you, it will cost you $200,000 for us to keep you alive for another 6 weeks. You're gonna be unconscious for most of the time because you're dying. You're 90. You're dying, and you're going to slip into a coma, and we're going to put you on all these machines, we're going to give you all this intravenous this and that, and we're going to put you on respirator, and it's going to cost $200,000, and we may get another 6 weeks of in and out of consciousness. Do you want to spend that money, yes or no? And then you get to decide whether or not you want to live another 4 to 6 weeks in and out of consciousness, or whether or not you want to take that $200,000-$300,000 and give it to your people, your family, your friends, your wife, whoever. Because you're going to die in 4 weeks anyway. That's the fact of the matter. There's nothing you can buy your way out of with that. What do you want to do? How do you want to go? This is the kind of thing that that adults and citizens discuss. And handing your money over and walking into a government clinic that looks like the DMV is the kind of thing that slaves and children do. So the plan is not to force people to do this. The plan is to make something like this available, and then the smart people will do it. And then the people who are kind of smart will look at the smart people doing it, and they'll go, man, that sounds like a plan, and then they'll start doing it. Same thing with homeschooling. In homeschooling, you get your kids homeschooled. They clean the clocks of some liberal who's sending them to public schools, and then they wonder why their kids are working for your kids. Next thing you know, they're kind of in the homeschooling movement. So we got to build these parallel structures, and we got to move into them. That's what I think the plan is now, Dave Barnhart. That's a great question. Chris Abate asks, what is best in life? I'll tell you what, Chris. I spent some time up on a lake in Idaho on the 4th of July, and then we walked off the trail, and we were in a, there's a waterfall back there. I live in Sherman Oaks, California. I don't know how city people. I'm saying this as a city person, or a suburban person, anyway. I don't think that life in the city is fully human. I don't. There's something fundamentally missing, and you know this to be true, because when you get off on a trail and you walk a couple of quarter mile and just off the trail, and there's a waterfall of just fresh flowing water, and you can just sit down and drink it. Probably should boil it first, but you can certainly drink it. And you're surrounded by nothing but trees, and that sound of a waterfall, or being out on a lake, as I was, just on a nice boat out on a lake. I understand these are not something that everybody can afford to do, but they are certainly the kind of things that everybody can afford to do now and then. It doesn't cost an arm and a leg to drive up to some place like this every 4 or 5 years. See, this is a great thing about America. There's not an American who's working a part-time job today, well, a full-time job anyway, who cannot afford every 3 or 4 years to get on an airplane and go to Las Vegas and for 3 days live like a Roman emperor would die for. Electricity and baths, and just the cheapest room in a Las Vegas hotel is luxury, the likes of which the richest and most aristocratic people in the history of the planet have never seen, ever, 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 ever. And that is all within the means of the humblest working person in America. If you have a little bit of discipline, you can save up and have a couple of those vacations in your life. I was out on a lake in Idaho, and then I was off the trail in Idaho. And honestly, Chris, I think that what's best in life is just being with friends and family, and just understanding how miraculous our age is, Novocaine, Chris, honestly, Novocaine, Dilaudid. I had a kidney stone. I was 4 hours. They gave me liquid Tylenol. I laughed. I felt nothing. 2 hours later, they took 2 hours because they keep the narcotics upstairs because of all the drug users. Thanks, guys. 2 hours later, after this kidney stone, by the way, you think is like a nice little round pebble. It's not. It's like a sand burr. It's the most evil thing in the world. And after 2-3 hours of just mumbling and mewling like some, utterly unmanned, just kind of whimpering, simpering thing, they gave me a couple of shots of Demerol in the IV bag. Ha! Nothing. The Demerol, a good hit of Demerol, took this thing that was this glowing light that just filled the room, just pain, 3 hours of pain that was just blinding white light that filled the room, got it down to the point where only the left side of my body was blinding white pain. And then finally, after 4.5 hours, they finally came in and said, "Okay, we got something for you." I said, "What?" And by now I can barely speak. And they said, "It's you're gonna like this. It's called Dilaudid." And Dilaudid is a fairly heavy-duty narcotic. And they put that Dilaudid in that IV bag, and about 20 seconds later, I was fine. To to live in a world like that, air travel, I never get over it. I don't think I've ever flown. I've flown hundreds of times commercial. I don't think I've ever flown, maybe once, where I didn't have a window seat. And every single time that airplane taxis onto the runway, no matter how tired I am, no matter how long I've gone or how much I've been working, every time that airplane taxis into position and that guy gives the throttles what they got, and all of that power comes up, you come up to full power and you feel it. You just feel that kind of rumble. I look out the window and I watch that runway go by faster and faster and faster, and that nose rotates and you get off the ground, and I'm just thinking, my God, it's a miracle. It's a miracle. Sometimes I'll fall asleep the second after we rotate because I'm just bone tired on the road, but I've never once not looked out the window on the takeoff roll. And good God, what an age to live in. You know, dentistry and Novocaine and Dilaudid and jet travel. That's what's best in life. And the reason we're miserable is we don't appreciate all this stuff. We just concentrate on all the things we see. But anyway, that's what I think. That's what I think we do. Parenthetically, also, what's best in life, Chris, is to hear the lamentation of the enemy's women and the gnashing of their teeth and watching their villages burn. But I'm a little old school like that. Bill Belko wants to know how long before the crash. Bill, I don't know. There's no question that something terrible is coming, economically and politically. There's no question about it. And by the way, I just noticed for the first time, we haven't had any ads tonight, have we? I haven't seen an ad yet. Oh my God, I should have kept my mouth shut. Anyway, I don't know. Here's what worries me. One of the things that comforts me is we don't seem to be seeing any immediate signs of an economic crash. We see indications, needless to say, this enormous debt, where the confidence, the substructure, the foundation is being eaten by termites. As kind of this dry rot is occurring, and we've got a lot of weight up there. And we keep putting more and more weight on a foundation that gets weaker and weaker and weaker. So while I don't see any immediate signs of a crash, the problem is you don't often get a lot of immediate signs of a crash. Sometimes these things happen pretty quickly. I think the signs will be runaway inflation. The people who know about economics say that's the thing that we'll start to see is serious inflation and then runaway inflation. And runaway inflation can happen very, very quickly and just destroy people's life savings in the space of a year or two. One of the great things I remember reading was somebody said, I don't remember where this quote comes from, but somebody asked a guy, they said, how did you go bankrupt? Rich guy said, how did you go bankrupt? And he said, slowly at first and then very quickly. And I think, yeah, I think that's it. Slowly at first and then very quickly. And that's what I worry about in terms of the crash. I'm worried that right now we're seeing signs of things that are happening slowly, and then suddenly things can happen very quickly. So look, I'm not one of these guys running around with my hair on fire screaming about all these things, but it's time to get prepared. It's time to be thinking about having a bunch of food on supply and what your plan is to, hang on being on a city and all that stuff. So, well, that's probably a whole episode right there. So we'll come back to that sometime. But look, be careful out there. Be ready. And don't do anything to help these people. Try and stop it. One way or another, we're going to get through this. I mean, the reason we're in this trouble is because there is no pain. The previous question is what's best in life. This life in the 20th century, there's no pain. 21st century, caught myself, that's where I live. There's no pain. No one pays any pain for anything. We haven't even felt the pain of Obamacare yet. That's why people vote for socialism, because it sounds nice, it feels good, and there's no pain. Well, people learn through pain. I'm a believer in spanking. And we haven't been spanked in 40 years. That's why we're turning into a nation of brats that's rolling around on the floor at the Walmart, screaming and kicking and wailing and crying and demanding a toy. So we're going to need some pain, and that pain is coming. And the sooner the pain gets here, the less pain it will take. And this is why I thought, this election is just, this last election is we're going to get what we deserve. And then we'll get through it, and we'll be on the other side, and we'll be better people. It's going to hurt for a while, but we'll be better people on the other side. Funny thing, by the way, whenever you talk to people who've lived through great catastrophes, my mom was was a child during the Blitz in London, and she got evacuated out to the country. She remembers German bombers and bombs going off and being in the subway down in the tube, and Churchill, seeing Churchill. And you talk about people who lived through the Depression or World War II, or even during the Civil War, the veterans of the Civil War. What's so interesting is when you get people who've lived through times of incredible hardship and they come to the end of their life, they were in comfort and then incredible hardship and then comfort again, they find that when they talk about their life looking back, they always remember the hardship as being the best times of their lives. Something about it, something about the shared sacrifice, something about overcoming things. We're wired for that, I believe. I really do. I think we're wired for that. And we don't have it, and that's why we feel lost. And I think we're going to get some of it. But even if we do, we're going to be okay, because we're bright, smart, hardworking people, and there's a lot more of us than we think there are. So, as always, there will be a remnant. That's a term that Albert Nock used in an essay called, what was it called? It's flown away from me. It's a remarkable essay. It's about one of the prophets basically being told by God that you're going to go out there, you're going to do this work that I want you to do, and no one's going to listen to you, and no one's going to notice, and no one's going to pay any attention. And he says, well, what, God, I've forgotten the name of the prophet. Somebody's going to come up with it in a second here. And he basically replies to God. He says, well, if no one's going to notice, then why would I do it? And God basically says, because somewhere downstream, somebody will remember what you said. Somebody will think maybe it's an original thought. But this idea that this remnant, this collection of people who keep this spirit of civilization and science and medicine and poetry, all that stuff. There's small numbers, always been a small number of people that will survive, and that the remnant will always be there. And you can't sell to the remnant. You can't pitch to the remnant. You can't even organize the remnant. The remnant doesn't even know they're the remnant. I suppose I'm a member of the remnant because I'm talking about the remnant. But anybody who's watching the show is, and anybody who's worried about these things probably is. And even though the vast majority of people have lost their way, they've always lost their way. And when things are good, they can afford to lose their way. When things get bad, it's going to be up to people like us to make sure that we get through this and we get through to the other side by doing the right things, by organizing things. That's an essay I wrote called Tribes, which was probably the best thing I wrote is on eject. Certainly the most influential thing I ever wrote. Basically said, look, they were talking about, rapes and, and potential murders in the Superdome and stuff right after Katrina. And I just said, my tribe doesn't do that. My tribe knows how to ration food, and my tribe knows how to boil water, and my tribe knows how to do all those things. So somebody's going to have to be there, and we're all going to have to be there together, and we'll get through this just fine. We always have, and we'll get some pain, and we'll take our pain, and we'll come through, and we'll look back on it as the high point of our lives, strangely enough. Yeah. Anyway, that was a great question, Bill. T.M. Smith wants to know 5 words. Thrust, lift, drag, gravity, explain. Isaiah's job. Thank you very much, Nick. Yeah, it was Isaiah. Thank you. That's a great essay by Isaiah's Job by Albert J. Nock. Look it up if you can. It's fantastic. Anyway, thrust, lift, drag, gravity, explain. Thrust, lift, drag, and gravity are the 4 forces that act upon an aircraft. And this is good for those of you who may not be pilots, just as a very quick thumbnail, because I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. We will do an all-flying episode one day. But when an airplane is in level flight at a constant airspeed, 4 forces are in balance. There are 2 forces that oppose each other. So when an airplane's in straight and level flight, it's generating enough lift to overcome gravity. Lift and gravity, the vectors, the amount of lift generated versus the weight of the airplane are in balance. The plane isn't rising or descending. If the plane is generating more lift than the weight of the airplane, then the plane will rise, it'll ascend. If the plane is generating less lift, either through the angle of attack on the wing or the airspeed or whatever the case may be, if it's generating less of an upward lifting force on the wings than it weighs, then the plane will start to descend. So lift and gravity are in opposition to each other, and when an airplane is in straight and level flight, it's generating just as much lift as it needs to to maintain its altitude, it's generating as much pounds of lift as it weighs in terms of pounds of gravity pulling it down to the ground. Likewise, in the forward motion, the horizontal component, there is thrust either through a propeller or a jet engine, generally speaking. Rocket engine is thrust as well, but let's just say a jet engine in this case. Jet engine develops a certain amount of thrust. Thrust pushes the airplane through the air. The problem is that the air doesn't like it very much. The air has to move over the wing, which generates the lift. It's air pressure that generates lift on the wing that lifts an airplane into the air. So you need a lot of thrust. You need to push it through this fluid medium called the atmosphere. And in order to do that, you have to provide thrust. We measure thrust in pounds. Pounds of thrust. It's like pulling on a rope. How many pounds does it take to pull this airplane through this air at this constant airspeed? And opposing thrust in the opposite direction is what we call drag. Drag is the pressure of the air on the airplane. There are two different kinds of drag. There's parasite drag, which is just the drag of the airplane moving through the air. In other words, if you are driving down the road, let's say in a car, or let's say you're in the back of a pickup truck, and you're driving down the road at 60 miles an hour, and you hold a plank, a 2x4, a plank out, a board rather, right? You hold it sideways, and it wants to come back a little bit because the drag on the narrow side of the board is pushing the plank back, but it's not terribly significant because the parasite drag, the amount that's visible to the air, is pretty narrow. But if all of a sudden you flip that board sideways like this, it's going to just come right out of your hand because you've increased the surface area moving through the air. You've increased the parasite drag of that board. So as the parasite drag increases, the plane slows down. You need more thrust. That's one kind of drag. The other kind of drag is much more important, and it's much less easy to visualize, but the other kind of drag is called induced drag. And induced drag is a function of the airflow moving over the wing. The surface of the wing is curved, the bottom of the wing is flat. So two air molecules that reach the leading edge of the wing at the same time. The air molecule on the bottom just goes pretty much straight ahead, but the air molecule that's just slightly above it, above the dividing point on the leading edge of the wing, that air molecule has to travel a longer distance. It has to go up and over and around. And since it has to go a longer distance, it has to accelerate. That means the little molecules get spread out. So since there's fewer of them, it's kind of a vacuum. There's lower pressure. And the pressure beneath the wing slightly higher. So all these molecules on the bottom of the wing, fewer molecules on the top, push the wing up. That's induced drag. That's lift. But the process also slows the wing down. It takes a lot of force to make it do that. That's called induced drag. And as your angle of attack of the wing, which is the angle of the wing moving through the air, as that angle of attack increases, the amount of induced drag increases, the amount of lift increases. So in order to make lift, you have to induce drag. So basically, that's the short form on how an airplane flies. An airplane that weighs 5,000 pounds has to generate 5,000 pounds of lift in terms of low pressure area on the surface of the wing, and 5,000 pounds of lifting force will be generated once you reach a certain speed. At that speed, the plane weighs nothing on the runway, and as you increase the angle of attack on the wing, the lift continues to increase, but the weight of the airplane doesn't. The weight of the airplane actually goes down. Anybody want to guess why the airplane gets lighter as it flies over time? Does it have less metal in it? No. But it has less fuel in it. So every minute an airplane's in the air, it's actually getting a little bit lighter because it's burning fuel. So when the airplane weighs nothing on the runway, when there's just enough lift to make 5,000 pounds of lift, and an airplane weighs 5,000 pounds, the airplane's weight is neutral. Once you start generating 2 or 3 more pounds than that, there's 2 or 3 pounds of lift pulling that airplane up off the runway. And in many cases, it's hundreds of thousands of pounds of lift. And conversely, the more thrust we apply, the faster the plane accelerates. And the faster the plane accelerates, the more drag it encounters. The faster it's going through the air, the more the air tries to slow it down, and the more lift it tries to generate, the more induced drag it creates. So there's a limit. That's why planes don't accelerate through the sound barrier and just keep on going. As the plane goes faster and faster and faster, the drag load increases, and finally the drag counteracts the thrust. You'll probably know that when you take off on a commercial flight, on the takeoff roll, you'll get full power, and you'll hear it and feel it. It is the jet engines doing everything they can to get this plane off the runway. We've got to accelerate quickly. We want all the thrust we have in the box to get this thing off the runway at a safe distance. And as we start a climb, we're climbing very steeply, so we're at full power. We're at what we call a VY climb. That's the best rate of climb. That airplane is climbing as fast as it can. But if you're on a commercial flight, you'll notice very early, and certainly if you're over a noise-sensitive area, I'm talking 20 seconds after you rotate and get off the ground, you feel the engines come back a little bit. That's mostly in commercial jets to reduce the noise footprint. On some piston-powered airplanes, you have to kind of come back on the power because you can only run full power at 5 minutes or else the engine starts to overheat. But basically, as you continue to climb, more or less, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but more or less, as the airplane climbs, you get more or less all the thrust you have, and you're increasing that angle of attack, and you're pushing the plane faster through the air, and you're climbing, and you're climbing, and you're climbing. And then when you get to your normal cruise altitude, Viper Check says, we've got an F-16 pilot over here, and he says a plane gets lighter with ordnance, too. Yeah, if you drop a 2,000-pound bomb on somebody, then your airplane gets 2,000 pounds lighter, like that. Lucky son of a bee. Anyway, once you get to cruise altitude, you'll hear it. You'll feel it on a commercial jet. You'll feel the plane just kind of ease over, and you'll hear the engines come back. And when you go from one place to another in a commercial jet, you are nothing like at full power. You're probably at 70%, 60-70% fuel. What that means is your engines are generating, let's just say, 70% of their total thrust, and that means that the plane is going through the air at about 565 miles an hour, round numbers. And if you put in more power, you'd go faster. And you'd climb. You'd have to lower the nose. It's a little complicated after that point. We're not going to waste any more time on it, but that's the basics of lift, thrust, drag, and gravity explained. Related to this, Robert Flippo wants to know thoughts on the China stealth fighter. I think it's a piece of junk. I don't know for a fact. It's big. That's not good for stealth. They've never done it before. Stealth, we've been working on stealth since the 70s. Stealth is not easy. Stealth cross-section not easy. Now, needless to say, the Chinese have the benefit of us doing, like the Russians, of us doing all the work and then us handing them all the info. We developed a kind of propeller that drives our submarines through the waters at incredibly high speeds and almost no noise. And it is a fantastically complicated design on this propeller. It's so complicated that we couldn't manufacture them. And so we had the Japanese manufacture these propellers that has to have something like 7 degrees of motion, this thing that creates this incredible propeller shape that can go very fast without making bubbles and cavitation and noise. And so we worked on this for 10 or 15 years, spent billions of dollars on it, whatever it was, manufactured these propellers for our submarines, and then the Japanese sold that same propellers, sold them to the Russians. And the Russian subs got 10 times quieter like that because we did the work. And they got the benefits. So with that said about the Chinese stealth fighter, they have our benefits of stealth. However, implementation is not as easy. And I don't think it's worth very much. We're having problems with our own stealth fighter with the F-35. And if we're having problems, then I'm not confident that China's doing things better than we are. With all of that said, the fastest way to get yourself into real trouble in a war is to assume that the enemy's incompetent and that you've got everything iced. That's our entire Vietnam strategy in the air. We've got much better jets than the Russians do. No, we don't. So it looks like junk to me, but I wouldn't treat it as junk. I'd treat it as a serious threat, and I'd get ready to counter it. Dan Gooch wants to know, will America grow up again? Dan, I'm going to tie this into what I said earlier. America will grow up in the same way that children grow up. Children grow up when they become disciplined, and they become disciplined. Very few children become disciplined very few children become disciplined because they have the strength of character to develop their own sense of discipline. I bet that's 1 kid in 10,000. Some of them do. And most children are disciplined by punishment. And punishment is a result of pain. It's either psychic pain or physical pain. I think physical pain is less cruel. A little bit of spanking never hurt anybody, in my opinion. Beating children nearly to death does. I'm not talking about that. But I think your answer, Dan, is America will grow up again when America starts feeling some pain again, and I think the pain is coming. And as the pain begins to arrive in terms of lost economic growth and maybe even economic collapse, runaway inflation, loss of freedoms and so on, we're either going to grow up or we'll do what other adolescents who can't grow up do, is we'll put a needle in our arm and we'll evade the problem and we'll get high under a bridge. And they'll find our country somewhere sitting under a bridge with a needle in its arm. But I don't think that'll happen to us. I think we need a little discipline. And very rare to enforce discipline on yourself. Discipline is almost always enforced from without, from somebody else. And in this case, I think it's going to be the laws of economics coupled with the laws of gravity and all these other thermodynamics. But basically, we're going to have to get spanked, and then presumably will grow up. I hope we will. Some of us will. Some of us don't need to be spanked. Some of us are grown-ups already, but it's not a big number. So we'll see. Joshua Tiemans, we still got a bunch to do, and we've got very little time, so I have to pick up the pace here. Joshua Tiemans says, personal choice for a national anthem. I do have a personal choice for a national anthem. It's called the Star-Spangled Banner. And I love that song. I know it's impossible to sing. I know it's hard to sing along with. But the great thing about the 4th of July, I was watching the 4th of July and all the fireworks displays and listening to these, the big loud ones coming over the lake, not the pretty ones, the dynamite ones, just the flashes for the sound. Boom, 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 these muffled kind of things. And I thought, man, that sounds like the front lines in World War I or any other cannonade. And I realized, no, you know what? This country was born to the sound of that kind of thing. I love it. I think it's just grand. I think the Star-Spangled Banner is a great anthem. I think the idea of it, it's really a very poetic idea if you think about it. It's an image, really. The whole song's about one picture, isn't it? Really, when you get right down to it, nobody ever thinks about what the song is. We just kind of sing it. But what the song basically is about a guy who's prisoner of a foreign power, and the foreign power represents tyranny and dictatorship. And as the smoke of battle clears in the morning, he sees the red, white, and blue flying over the fort defiantly. It's a glimpse of freedom through the clouds and smoke of battle. And that is what this country is all about. It's not about amber fields of grain, amber waves of grain. Lots of countries have amber waves of grain. It's about seeing defiance and freedom in a cloud of smoke in the sunrise aboard a British man of war and thinking this country is different. And many people say, many liberals say, oh, we got to change the national anthem. It's so warlike. You're damn right it's warlike. That's what I like about it. It's warlike. It's like, it's not the first resort, but it's the last. And that's something I think is just terrific. So my choice for national anthem would be the Star-Spangled Banner. Seba Rybert wants to know, ever had a tough audience? I did. I had a tough audience a couple times at Oberlin College, where Reason and Logic Go to Die, and somewhat tough at the University of Toronto. And I've talked about how I've dealt with, by and large, those are the only two, and I've done, I think, 100 of these things now, and I just can't tell you how unbelievably supportive and wonderful all the live audiences I've had are. They're just, it's not just like great audiences or good audiences. They're miraculous, and it's 20 people. Sometimes I've spoken for 2 people, and sometimes I've spoken in front of 15, 20,000 people, and it doesn't matter. It always fills me with a tremendous sense of joy and pride and many other emotions. But on the 2 I had, I was dealing with liberals who were, expressing their unearned moral superiority, and I think I'll save that story for later. But basically, the only times I've ever gotten in trouble was I wasn't in trouble. No one's ever booed me. No one's ever picketed me. No one's ever tried to shout me down. As a matter of fact, I've never gotten a death threat. I've never gotten a physical threat, except one time from another conservative. I know guys like Andrew Breitbart and would get these daily. So I guess on some level I don't activate something in people. I mean, I call names and stuff on the internet, but I don't seem to generate that kind of violent response, which suits me just fine. So I've had a couple tough audiences, and the only way to deal with them is to be calm and kind of as funny as you can, and try and use references like The Simpsons, but basically do not let them have the moral superiority. Just go kick that out of the way and watch them sit there and wonder and not know what to do. Hanya Ella, give me a second. Pozniak, who has an awesome Facebook logo. It's the side view of the Saturn V rockets. There's a picture of von Braun standing in front of a Saturn V that's lying on its side, and every one of those F1 engines on the main stage of the Saturn V is 5 or 6 times his height or something like that, and there's 5 of them. So I'm right with you there, Hanya. Favorite movie of all time? Probably Aliens. I think of all the movies I've ever seen, Aliens was the movie I liked the most. I just loved it. I thought the first one, I thought Alien was great. It was a real sci-fi famine there in the 70s, late 70s, and Alien came out in 79, I think. And Aliens was about 82, 83. But when I saw those Marines get into that thing, and then I saw that thing go into the the condensing tower and the turret roll down off the back, and those guys are in there and they're playing that kind of battle theme. I thought, this is absolutely the most fun I've ever had. Had a lot of fun with the Wrath of Khan too. I thought that movie was a lot of fun. I may have to say that I wouldn't call it my favorite movie, because Aliens is my favorite movie, but certainly the most influential movie of my life, without question, is 2001: A Space Odyssey. I saw that film in a theater in '69, and then very few people are going to remember this, but there was a long period of time in the '70s, mid to early '70s, where they used to run midnight movies. And theaters would stay open a midnight movie of something odd. Rocky Horror Picture Show, I saw that probably, 15 times on a midnight movie back before it got overripe, back when it was really, really fun. But they'd run Monty Python and the Holy Grail at midnight, and they'd run 2001: A Space Odyssey. And I saw 2001: A Space Odyssey on a big screen at a midnight showing. I probably saw it 20 times. It's not an action movie. I saw it again recently. It's very slow. But for a guy who's into space and aeronautics and astronautics, it's a documentary. It's a documentary. And that docking sequence at the beginning where the Ares docks with spaceship, with Space Station 1 with a Space Station 5, was it? Anyway, where that docking sequence where the Ares Pan Am Space Clipper runs up to the rotating space station, which wasn't finished. They were still building it. I remember thinking, God, that looks so real. 86, I guess it was. Thanks, guys. It blew my mind. It just blew my mind. I used to sketch those, the little docking portals, all those graphics in there. I used to sketch them in class and write them out with rulers and stuff. And just the idea that you would have these frames that you would fly down and get them aligned, which seems so instantly intuitive to me and obvious. Turns out that this is what we have now. It's called Highway in the Sky. HITS is a form of navigation where you just basically fly through these boxes like in 2001. And it just completely fried my brain. I mean, I just loved it. And I always thought the Stargate stuff, that the stoners would come and they'd sit through, an hour and a half, 2 hours of, nonsense just to get to the Stargate stuff so they could lie on the floor of the theater and just do their acid and trip it out. The first minute of that was kind of cool, but then it's like, get on with it. But I love this stuff, this space stuff. And needless to say, Buckaroo Banzai is still got such a special place in my heart. And I'm going to do a movie update episode coming up. And I'll talk more about that because I'm going to do something before Aurora, and it's going to be really, really fun. It's going to have a Buckaroo kind of elements in it. So that's my favorite movie of all time, is Aliens, 2001, and Buckaroo Banzai. Jeff Norton wants to know, faster than light, yes or no? Jeff, for almost all my life, I thought yes. And then very recently, 10 years ago, I thought no. And now I'm starting to think maybe. I'd say no. One of the problems with science fiction, that was I knew we had a buried sci-fi question somewhere that I couldn't get to. I should have moved it up. But basically, we want faster than light travel because there is no other planet in our solar system where you can just go stand there and take your helmet off. And that's what people want. That's what we're wired for. I was talking earlier about the waterfall and the lake. We want that. We want a new one. We want a new Earth. That's what we want. That's our longing, is a new home. We want a new world, like the new world was for the previous, not just the previous generations, but for all of humanity. There's always been a frontier. There's always been something undiscovered. There's something fundamental about our nature, and Americans' nature especially. We're self-selecting like that. That is just overwhelming, and that's what we want. In fact, I hadn't thought about this before, but I'm going to do something real quick here because, give me 1 second, because this is worth reading. I gotta do a quick little Google search here. Okay. We're talking about faster than light travel because since there's nothing in our solar system that is a new world, we can reach the solar system in reasonable periods of times. Weeks, certainly. If we had decent nuclear rockets, we'd be anywhere in the solar system within weeks. But months or years. A month, a year or 2 years to Jupiter, that kind of thing. It's achievable. The stars, without faster than light travel, using even nuclear rockets, even the most advanced nuclear rockets on the drawing board, the nearest star is, it's just beyond our means. I don't think we could get to 10% of the speed of light. 10% of the speed of light would take us, if we got up to 10% of the speed of light, That'd be 45 years to Alpha Centauri. But you don't get to start. You got to accelerate, and then you got to slow down. It's a 100-year journey for the foreseeable future. And so you start looking at, the kind of engines that can get you up to appreciable levels of the speed of light. If you got up to 50% of the speed of light, Alpha Centauri becomes an 8-year journey, a 10-year, 12-year, 15-year, something like that. Probably manageable medically. You could find ways to keep people asleep or bring them up and put them back down again, as we do in Aurora. But it's not easy. And so one of the reasons faster-than-light travel is so common in sci-fi is it's really kind of laziness on the part of the author. He wants to get us into the story. The fact of the matter is, just because we want it doesn't mean it's real. This is the fundamental essence of conservatism, right? There's a lot of things I want to be true, but they're not true. And the evidence against faster-than-light travel for objects that have mass is almost overwhelming. Almost overwhelming. Let me just read you one thing here. It's not really so much to do with the faster-than-light thing. But I just read it, and it blew my mind. We want faster-than-light travel so we can find a new Earth. And this is the last page of The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. And listen to this description of the new world. Here's what F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote. I'd never read this before. This is remarkable. He said, "And as the moon rose higher, the inessential houses began to melt away until gradually I became aware of the old island here that flowered once for Dutch sailors' eyes, a fresh green breast of the new world. Its vanished trees, the trees that had made way for Gatsby's house, had once pandered in whispers to the last and greatest of all human dreams. For a transitory, enchanted moment, man must have held his breath in the presence of this continent, compelled into an aesthetic contemplation he neither understood nor desired, face to face for the last time in history with something commensurate to his capacity for wonder." Face to face for the last time in history with something commensurate for his capacity to wonder. I had that sense when I was out in the backwoods in Idaho. That this new world, this North America, is just so overwhelmingly beautiful. It's so shockingly beautiful. There's so much of it, and it's just that what we need as a people, especially as Americans who are self-selected as people from a frontier and explorers, we need to come face to face. We need to come face to face with something commensurate for our capacity for wonder. And to me, the only thing left out there is space exploration. That's why I've always been so interested in it. It's the only thing that's worthy of our imaginations and our effort. It's the only thing hard enough that challenges us anymore. That's why I've always been fascinated by it. Moving on, Andrew Biscoe says, "Is there room for bacon?" Andrew, this may be the most profound and also the most stupid question that's ever been asked on this show. Because, frankly, Andrew, if there's no room for bacon, then what's the point? If there's no room for bacon, then why are we doing any of this? Why do we have jet travel? Why do we land on the moon? Why do we make movies? What's the point of medicine and poetry? And why even have fast cars and hot women if there's no room for bacon? I can't even bear to think about it. Scott DiMichele? Sorry, Scott DiMichele, I want to say. Michelli? Scott DiMichele, perhaps? Are you done growing up? Boy, I sure hope not. Somebody said your opinion is where you arrive when you've stopped thinking. It might be true, but I have come a long way from where I was as a teenager, and I don't foresee the kind of fundamental change in attitude that I had as I became a conservative, and because when I was young. Look, I was always pro-American, always pro-military, pro-business. Never, ever had a day in my life when I wasn't in favor of those things. But I was a lot more liberal than I am now. And I thought this guy was a crazy old man who was going to get us all killed. And I believed that because everybody else believed that. And what did I know about Ronald Reagan? Had I read anything he'd ever written? No. Did I know anything about his policies? No. Did I know anything about negotiation with the kind of regimes like the Soviets? No. When he walked away from Iceland because he wouldn't put SDI on the table, I thought that was our last best chance to avoid annihilation, and this crazy old man has blown everything. It turns out he was absolutely right. I was absolutely wrong. And I don't see myself having that same kind of reversal, only because I used to believe things I knew nothing about. And now I find the more I learn, the more everything else gets connected. And by the way, Andrew, when I said the stupidest question, we all know we're joking, right? I mean, it's a profoundly deep question, whoever talks about bacon. But it really comes down to that. It's just, I don't know, I just don't see myself going to a philosophy or fundamentally changing my ways, because all I do for a living now is analyze this stuff. And it's not like the conservative message is 60% and the liberal message is 40% and there's a little room around the margins. It's like, no, folks. When you look at the Straits of Florida, it's not like 60% of the rafts are coming to America and 40% of the people in Fort Lauderdale are getting on inner tubes and swimming south to get to the free healthcare in Cuba. It's not 60-40. It's not 90-10. It's not 95-5. It's not 99-1. It's not one single raft going south on the Straits of Florida. Every single one of them is coming this way. How do you argue with that? I think I'm here to stay. That doesn't mean I'm not done growing up, though. I feel like I'm a better person than I was before I started this business. Your interactions with all the people I meet on the road and all the people on Facebook and all the fans and all that, it started with the eject comments. I just was a much worse person than I am today, and I've got a long way to go. God knows. But I'm not done growing up. I hope I'm not done growing up. I don't feel like a 54-year-old person. I see some people who are, I've always been a late bloomer. I've always been a kid at heart. I think there's a difference between childishness and childlikeness. And I'd like to be childlike without being childish. This is the battle that I'm undergoing now, trying to become more adult about the things that need an adult hand, and maintain a sort of kind of a playfulness about the things that don't. And real wisdom is knowing the difference between these two things. So, no, I'm not. I hope I never am. That's not to say, however, that you take refuge in your adolescence or your childishness. There's a lot of people, I'm never going to grow up. It's because you're a child. It's because you're a baby. You need to face it. You need to stand up, face some of this stuff, man up, and do what's responsible and what's necessary. And once you get those things out of the way, you can have fun. Once you pre-flight the airplane thoroughly, you can take off into the sky and relax. But if you don't do that beforehand, things are waiting to bite you. Michael Kraft wants to know, is Bill Mac or PC? Your humble narrator was a big PC guy for virtually his entire life. First computer I ever had was an Apple IIe, which I absolutely loved. And then as the Apple turned into the Macintosh and the PC started to take off, the computer revolution is driven by two things. Internet speed is driven by porn. Sorry to break that to you, but that's what basically drove high-speed internet. And graphics speed was driven by computer games, because it doesn't take a lot of graphic power to run Quicken or Word processors, but it does take a lot of power, a lot of horsepower and graphics power to run computer games, and that was what drove the technology on the consumer side. So I was a PC guy for almost all my life. I had a computer graphics company in the mid to somewhere around 93 to 97, 98, doing the sort of stuff that Pixar was doing, just doing it much, 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 much worse. It was just me. But doing 3D animations and stuff, so I was building networks and assembling computers and basically buying pizza boxes and motherboards and putting all this stuff together. So I was a PC guy my whole life, because you got a lot more bang for your buck in terms of raw horsepower. Everything I've ever had to do with computers up until recently was just plain horsepower. I just needed processing speed for 3D rendering. That's just no question that the PC is the way to go with that. However, I was so, needless to say, since I was a PC guy, I thought the Mac guys were a little nutty, and then the iPhone came along and the iPod, whatever, And I can just give you a couple quick examples. Two things really came to mind when I really made the switch. One of them was I was outside of we were at a screening at the Fox lot, and it was Sunday night. It was about 11:30. We got out, and a bunch of us said, we should go someplace, get a bite to eat. Where do we go? I don't know. Nobody knows the neighborhood. And somebody got their iPhone out, first or second generation iPhone, and they had an app called Around Me. And they just touched this app, and it's like, boink, here, phone knows where we are. Here's all these other restaurants. Here's their hours. Here's their phone numbers. Boom. I just went, oh, man. Oh, man. Amazing. It's amazing. And then right around that time, so I was sitting in a Mexican restaurant, and somebody had an iPhone. They touched an app called Shazam, and there was some background music playing, and there was a lot of noise in this restaurant. It was really loud in there, and sure enough, this thing heard the Girl from Ipanema or whatever it was playing, and it just said, "Here's the song. Here's who recorded it. Here's the album. Here's the link to download it to iTunes." And I thought, "Oh man, that's pretty cool." I had a laptop PC. I was late to the Wi-Fi thing, very late, probably 4 years ago. I got my last PC, laptop PC, and tried to log on to Wi-Fi networks, and I just couldn't do it. It was just every other one would just not do it. And Jeremy said, "I've got a used Mac laptop. Why don't you just take it, because they work." And I did. Choplifter is right, Dave Olson. Choplifter was an awesome game. So I did, and it works, and everything works, and everything talks to everything else, and I love it. And their customer service was great. I had an iPhone that just... I was getting out of a car. I was getting into a car in a restaurant. Don't tell anybody about this. And as I was getting into this car, it was a valet parking thing, and the iPhone fell out of my pocket just as the valet was closing the door. So he closed the door on the iPhone. And it broke it. But it didn't crack the screen. It just wouldn't come back. It was just dead. So I bought this iPhone at a Best Buy, and I bought the insurance on it. And the Best Buy insurance, because I was still in that world, and I went to Best Buy and I said, "This phone's not working. I don't know why it's not waking up." So I said I had the insurance. They said, "Well, we'll take the phone, we'll ship it back, and if it's covered..." What do you mean if it's covered? Said, "If it's covered, then we'll need it for 10 to 12 days, and then you can get it back. And if it's not repairable, we'll get you a reconditioned one." I said, "That's not what I had in mind." And the guy working at Best Buy, he's wearing a Best Buy shirt, walked up behind me and he kind of whispered. He said, "Take it to the Apple Store." I said, "I didn't buy it from the Apple Store, and I don't have a receipt or anything. Just do it." I said, "Okay." So I took it to an Apple Store, and I walked in and I said, "My iPhone just won't wake up. It's dead." And she looked inside. She says, "Oh, there doesn't appear to be any water damage. Would you like a new phone? Would you like your credit card credited, or would you like cash?" And I said, "A new phone would be great." She said, "Would you like us to transfer over your apps and everything?" "That'd be lovely. Thank you." That's customer service, and I was in. So now I am completely assimilated. I'm utterly assimilated. I have an iPhone. I have an iPad. I have an iMac. I have a Mac Pro. I'm missing one. And a MacBook Air. And I enter something in the calendar, and it goes to all the other ones, and I just love it. I think it works. So I'm a Mac guy. I'm not a Mac, zealot. I like them. I think they work. So let's see. We got so many. I'm just gonna have to skip some because I can't be here all night. Chris Bailey says, "Is this your first Camaro?" It's not, and I'm only going to answer this question because it gives me a chance to show this picture. Somebody on Facebook, you've probably seen it before, but for those of you who haven't, that took a little work. It takes courage to run the Stratosphere Lounge, and it takes a special kind of courage to show how dorky you were back in 1976. But in 1976, upper left-hand corner, that was me. I was a junior in high school. And I bought a 1970 Camaro, which you can see on the right there. And I loved that car so much. And I had to sell it because I had to quit my job at the planetarium because they boned my friends. They just totally, long story. And I had to sell it long before I wanted to. See a little black spot on the nose of it right above the center of the grill there? Somebody backed into my used car, which was in mint condition. They backed into it with a trailer hitch the second day I had the car. The second day. I put that ding on the nose, and it really made me angry. But that was me in 1976, and that was my Camaro, which I had to sell early. And I haven't been interested in cars. I've been interested in airplanes. I had a Ford Escort for a 2000 Ford Escort right up until 2012. And I could have gotten a new car, a different car in there somewhere, but I got the Sky Arrow airplane, which was a wise decision on my part. And I thought when they rebooted the Camaro, I thought, man, those things look fantastic. So thanks to your support and all the work that you guys have allowed me to do and supported me over the years, I finally, at 53 years old, I bought my first new car, which was a 2012 Camaro down there in the bottom right-hand corner. And I reproduced the photograph from high school as best I could, including the glasses and the geeky smile. And I think both the car and me are much, much better off than we were back in 1976. So thank you for that. I love it, by the way. I love it. I love it. I love that car. I thought I bought it for the looks, but honest to God, I'm shocked. It is a beautifully made car. It doesn't rattle. It's a fit, the finish. It's superbly made car. It really is. I didn't get the split front bumpers, by the way, Sean. The little bumpers on the Camaros used to leave the front of the grill, because bumpers back in those days were just ornaments. They're just chrome ornaments that don't do anything. But no, that was a 1970 Camaro, and I love it. I love the new one very much. Karen Goodrich wants to know, what is your number one goal? My number one goal, Karen, is to walk on the moon, and we will do an episode about how I plan to do that. Talked about it before. It's been almost a year. I got to get things straight priority-wise. Got a lot of things coming up, but we'll come back to that. But that is my goal, to walk on the moon. It was my goal since I was 5, and I don't see any reason to give up now. My feeling on this is, if I can walk on the moon, then America will be okay, because if a regular schmo like me can walk on the moon, then the country's in fine shape. So we'll come back to that. We'll do a walk on the moon episode and free frontier stuff and talk about all that stuff again. But there it was, so I took it. The next question comes from Chris Bailey. Have you ever been to Kentucky? Chris, I have. Right around that time you saw in the picture there. Let's go back to that fantastic picture of me, 1976. What a good Lord. Anyway, back around 1976, right in that ballpark, I was working at the Miami Planetarium, and we had a show called Long Journey Beyond God, which was about the Apollo program, coincidentally enough. And we installed it at a planetarium in Kentucky. And I was, I don't know. So this is, 40 years ago now? Is that right? Oh, God. 40 years. Something. Yeah, 40 years ago. And I don't remember where it was. It was the Tri-Cities, Kings, somebody, Johnson City, Kings, in somewhere. But there was a planetarium up there in a park. It was really beautiful, up in Kentucky. And I went in and installed that show up at that. I've almost got the name of it, but it was in the Tri-Cities, and I was up in Kentucky for about a week or two putting it in. I had a great time, ran a bunch of shows, got everybody trained up on it. I thought it was really beautiful up there, really, really beautiful. I remember being amazed at the liquor laws. I don't know if they've changed. I suppose they have, but in 1976 in Kentucky, you go to a restaurant, and as I recall, you could not order liquor there, but you could drink it. But you had to bring the bottle, but the bottle could not be on the table. This is what happens when you have bad laws, right? So you could go to a restaurant, bring your own bottle, drink alcohol from the bottle, but not, and pour it into a drink, but the bottle could not be on the table. Anyway, that was last time I was in Kentucky, but lovely place. And Kentucky is one of the few teams in the SEC that I don't just loathe and despise, maybe because they haven't beaten us in 40 years or something like that. Sorry, Kentucky. Great basketball team. Patrice Franklin wants to know, ever listen to conservative talk radio? No, I don't. I've never listened to conservative talk radio, ever. I don't listen to Rush. I don't listen to Fox. I don't listen to Beck. I don't watch O'Reilly. I don't watch Hannity. I don't watch any of it. I don't, and I never have. And I, not saying I'm proud of that. I think one of the reasons I don't do it is because, number one, I don't have a lot of time, and secondly, I don't want to be derivative. I kind of like to go to the source material, come up with my own stuff, and so I never really listened to conservative talk radio at all. I've done a Rusty Humphrey show probably 4 or 5 times, done 3 hours on the air with him, done a call-in on Dennis Miller a couple times, and but no, the only thing I've ever watched on Fox was the Red Eyes that I was on, just to critique myself. And I just don't watch other people much. I did see Glenn Beck at CPAC one year. He was the featured speaker, and we were just outside of the PJ booth, and we couldn't get in, and we were watching him on the monitors. And I was watching Beck talk about the Statue of Liberty, and I thought, I don't think there's anybody better than this. This guy is superb. It's like you're a basketball player, a football player. And you're watching you're a quarterback and you think you're okay, and you watch some guy out there on the field and just go, wow. With that said, Rush Limbaugh is a genius. Rush Limbaugh is a gigantic IQ, massively bright guy, And the wonderful thing about Rush, who is without question the king of this entire game, Rush has the intellect and the arguments, but what Rush has more than anything is he has the absolutely incorruptible, unassailable confidence of his position. Rush Limbaugh has never spent a moment of his life where he was ashamed to be a conservative, never been a moment where he thought we were wrong. He relishes in it. And somebody made the interesting comparison, I think it's interesting, but I absolutely believe this is true, and said that Rush Limbaugh is a humble man who acts like he's arrogant, and Barack Obama is an arrogant man who acts like he's humble. I think it's exactly right, and I think it's right for the right reasons. I think genuine humility. I think Rush is a genuinely humble guy, and I think it comes from having a monster in intellect, just a massively bright guy. Very confident, very well informed. And like I said earlier, when you start putting these pieces together and everything locks into place and it starts forming these triangles and these kind of rigid sort of structures that all interlock and all sort of back each other up, you come from a place of confidence. And I'm getting there. I don't know if I'll ever have his ability to just, the great Rush story I remember having heard about was Rush basically, this is in the era of global warming and all this other stuff, and he was saying, ladies and gentlemen, we were flying to Houston in EIB-1, my private Gulfstream jet, and we'd taken off and we were an hour en route, and I suddenly realized that I'd left my favorite hat and my golf clubs back in Florida. But not to worry, because I made a phone call and immediately had the golf clubs in the hat dispatched on EIB-2, which is my other corporate jet, and it arrived shortly after my arrival in Houston, and I thought the genius of that, the genius of it, to be that in your face over it, because he's right. Rush worked his tail off. Rush is worth every penny of the tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars that he's gotten from his radio show, plus the Snapple thing. Rush said, I like Snapple. And the Snapple went from $4 million to a couple $1 billion, right? He's earned every penny. There's great titans out there, lots of brilliant people. Levin is great, and Savage is great, and Rusty, all these guys are terrific. But Rush is in a league. Dennis Miller, Rush is in a league all his own, and Rush doesn't run from anything. He runs towards it, and he's an inspiration to me in that sense. But I never listen to any of them ever. I don't listen to Fox ever. I know people are really quite surprised by that, but it's the truth. Same question verbatim from. We'll be done by 8. John Q. Lee says, will you have more Firewall? Adrian Joe Wakefield, on the other hand, says, Firewall, will there be more? So we have the difference between East and West. Probably not for the foreseeable future. I will tell you, I took the question because I wanted to say that I'm working on a series for the virtual presidency called Your Government, which will look like the What We Believe series for Firewall. It's be completely different, obviously. But the first one starts with a quote that basically says, either the government belongs to you or you belong to the government. It's one or the other. This is no longer your government, and it hasn't been for a while. Here's what we can do to take it back. And then I'll be in the Oval Office, and I will do anywhere between 8 and 12 different pieces, shorter this time, 3 to 5 minutes. We'll talk about legislation, we'll talk about immigration, we'll talk about healthcare, we'll talk about all these things. And there'll be a match set, which means there'll be a DVD available, and I've just got to write them all, and we're trying to find a practical Oval Office set. In other words, a physical set of the Oval Office, in which case we'll just rent it for the day. I'll go in there and shoot all 12 of them. If not, we'll do it on a 3D set and do it the way we did the Star Trek thing. But yes, there are going to be more of those kind of political commentaries. They'll be shorter, cleaner, more up-to-date. They'll be done as the virtual president, but I don't think we'll see any Firewalls for the time being, at least until I can get those out. Firewall's handy. You will see more Firewall someday because there's always things that the virtual president can't really discuss. And Firewall is my personal skin. That's the one I own and the one we can use, but nothing in the immediate future. We got about 5-6 more to go, and then we're done. John Swetland wants to know, Alan West versus Marco Rubio. Please. Alan West would destroy Marco. Alan West is the real deal. I've gotten to know Alan fairly well, and Alan West is the real deal. Alan West is a genuine patriot. He's a big, tough guy. He's a massive guy. He's not super tall, but he's just huge. And he loves this country, understands it, is made out of tempered steel. The guy's kind and as sweet as can be. He's a great family man. He's a very gentle, kind man who goes out and kills bad guys. Doesn't talk about it. He actually does it. He's the ideal guy, I think, for president. I can't tell you how much I like Alan West. I like him. I did not just admire him, but I like him. And I have a lot of problems with Marco Rubio. So it's Alan West all the way home for me. Favorite, Dan Larrabee wants to know, favorite historical era to live. I would rather be alive today than at any other time in human history, without question. Dan, without question, this is the time to be alive. With that said, I've always felt this way. I've felt this way since I was a young kid, and since I've been reading so much about Churchill lately, I will tell you that if I could be somewhere else, and I would make the switch for this. The one thing in the world, in the history of the world, the one thing I would like to have done more than anything was I would like to have been a Spitfire pilot in the Battle of Britain. I think that was as good as it could have gotten, to be one of the few, you and 200-300 guys, 400 guys defending Western civilization against this onslaught. And these guys were 17, 18, 19 years old. Some of these guys were going up in Spitfires and Hurricanes. They had 10 hours of flight time. I've got 1,000 hours. A lot of these guys didn't see 11 or 12 hours. They 10 hours, 12 hours of total flight time, and they're getting in Hurricanes and going up and defending their country against this oncoming Nazi wave. To have been a pilot, to have been a Royal Air Force pilot in the Battle of Britain, I think honestly was as good as it got. I just can't imagine anything more important, heroic, interesting, or memorable. I just don't think there's a greater honor. I'm not aware of a greater honor. Maybe one of the guys at Thermopylae, but they didn't come home. The idea that you could, and these kids, by the way, these guys, they're so young, and they're these most of these guys were these kind of dandified sort of British public schools guys. I'm a British public school kid too. I went to British public schools for the first half of my life. And they're rather dainty, and they're having their tea and their biscuits, and they're sitting there and their jolly good show and all this whole thing, and then these Nazis are coming over in waves, and these guys would go up for their 5th or 6th or 7th mission of the day. They land the airplane, they come back on the throttle to idle, and then the ground crews would run out, thought the guy's been shot and bleeding out, and it turns out he's just fallen asleep. He landed the airplane and fell asleep as the plane taxied out. This happened all the time. Exhausted for months. And there's Winston Churchill. Never has so much been owed by so many to so few. And by the way, the Spitfire, I think the Mustang is probably a better looking airplane, but it's not as elegant as the Spitfire. The Mustang, the difference, I think, is a great example. I think the difference between a Mustang and a Spitfire is the difference between an American muscle car like a Camaro and a Jaguar. It's a different taste, a different look. I kind of like the angles. I kind of like the steel and the muscly look of the P-51. But honestly, there is nothing like the wing of a Spitfire, that elliptical pointed wing. And the thought of being in Spitfires, getting up there every day and just climbing into the sky over southern England and just doing battle to defend your homeland is, I just can't imagine anything I'd rather do. That would have been it for me. I would have gone back and been a Spitfire pilot and not a Hurricane pilot. I wouldn't take the deal if it was a Hurricane. Hurricanes did most of the work. They actually did, probably the majority of the kills were made by Hurricanes, but Hurricane's not a good looking airplane. And the Spitfire is, and that it's got to be a Spitfire. But you give me a Spitfire, I would have been there. In fact, being Eagle Squadron would have been really super cool. Being an American pilot defending Britain in Spitfires, that would have been, awesome. Wrap it up here. Beth Albert, creamy or crunchy peanut butter? Crunchy by a mile. Funny you mentioned that, Beth. The reason I took the question is because I think that a peanut butter and jelly sandwich made with Skippy Super Chunk peanut butter, strawberry preserves, melt the peanut butter, put it in a microwave, get it nice and soft, and then just plain old white bread is the food of the gods. And I'd eat nothing but that, except you gain a lot of weight eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I think my favorite time on the road was in a hotel a couple months ago. And I got to the hotel and it was like 10:45 at night, and I was tired, and I just did a bunch of speaking, and I was hungry, and I checked the menu, and there's all these steaks and stuff, and it's like kids menu peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I said, I'll take 3. And man alive, those are delicious. So yes, it's crunchy peanut butter, Skippy Super Chunk, in the microwave till it's soft, and then strawberry preserves and white bread cut diagonally. Man, that is the only thing that comes close to that is a Chick-fil-A sandwich and bacon. Oh boy. Favorite websites that I visit, says Steve Baus. Really only, I go to Instapundit and Drudge for my news, and I go to The Chive for my entertainment. The Chive is, I've spoken about it before, thechive.com is, I've been going to The Chive for 3-4 years now. It is remarkable. It's just an astonishing place. It's so entertaining. They're all just nothing but photo essays, not a printed word there, really. It's just photo essays on different subjects. There's some cheesecake there, but no porn, but just lots of cheesy cheesecake, which is a nice way to break up the day. And lots of funny stuff, just lots of interesting, weird, interesting photographs, and it's a great way to kill time. I'm probably there 4 or 5 times a day. Likewise with Instapundit, Glenn Reynolds. Without Glenn Reynolds, I wouldn't be here. No one would ever have heard of me if it hadn't been for Glenn Reynolds. So Instapundit and The Chive and occasionally Drudge is pretty much it. Paul, I've got to move here, I know, but some of these questions are actually pretty simple, so I'm going to try and answer them simply, even though they're very deep questions. Paul Whiteley wants to know, can we turn it around? Paul, we can turn it around if we believe we can, and if we think we can't, we won't. It's what I started the show by saying. We either believe we can, and we will, or we don't believe we can, and we won't. So the reason I do the Stratosphere Lounge is to remind everybody who's watching it out there, no matter what you're going through, no matter how bad you feel, I feel as bad as you do, believe me. I don't know how I process all this sometimes. I just want to give up and throw it all in the ocean and just run away and just go live in Ecuador or Costa Rica or something. Nope. You get up every day and fight these bastards. Every day you get up and fight them, and we will beat them. We will. We'll turn it around if we believe we can. We're not nearly as far gone as we've been in our history. We've not nearly as far gone as other civilizations have been in their history. We just have to hang on and believe in ourselves and believe in our country, believe in our ideals, and go at them passionately and competently. And sooner or later, the Republican Party will understand that, and then we'll stop doing nothing. And when we stop doing nothing, since the elections are more or less 50-50 with us doing nothing and them doing everything, history will be kind to us. We just got to actually get in the game, you know. So I do think we can turn around. It's all personal attitudes, your personal decision, Paul, and that's a decision you're going to have to make every day, just like Winston Churchill. Mark Getz wants to know, would you die for someone? Absolutely, I would. There's a number of people I'd die for. There's a number of ideas I'd die for. I don't think I have any doubt about that. I really don't. There are circumstances where there are, without question, circumstances where I would risk my life for a stranger. If some kid fell off, jumped off a pier or something out in Santa Monica, I'd be in the water before the kid hit the water. I'd be over the rail before the kid hit the water. If you're talking about, certainty of death kind of things, that narrows the pool a little bit. But I think if I saw a child in the water with sharks or something like that, I don't think I'd think twice about it. I really don't. I hope I wouldn't. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. I still want to be a fighter pilot. That's a dangerous occupation, and it's hard. It's hard to sit here on the top of the food chain in America in 2013 with all these freedoms and all this luxury and all, my car and apartment and all this other stuff, and not be aware of the fact that all of this is made possible by mostly 17, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old, 22-year-old sergeants or a little older who are making, $200 a week, living in tents on the other side of the world, making all this possible. How dare anybody say, yeah, that's good enough for them, but I'm just going to stay here safe and comfortable. If the opportunity ever came where I would feel like I could do some good, I'd do some good. I tried to enlist after 9/11. Called the Air Force. I was probably 43. I said, I'm a pilot. I can wash airplanes. Free yourself up for other pilots to do things. They said they'd get back to me. Yes, I would. I think most everybody would for something. There are some people who wouldn't, but I think there's not a person. I don't think there's a person in the world really who wouldn't jump in front of something to save their own child. So yes, there is things I would die for. There's certainly people I would die for, and there's ideas I would die for. I prefer not to, but I would. And I think the essence of our entire theory of the military is that we don't do suicide missions. We can do long-shot missions. We can do missions that are risky and dangerous where the odds aren't good. But I'm not aware of a U.S. unit ever been sent on a suicide mission. I think the closest I'm aware of was it 1st Minnesota on on the second day of Gettysburg, where they were making a charge, the Confederates were making a charge, and something like 40,000 guys coming forward, and the Union line was about to buckle, and there was a big gap, and the Union commander basically said to I think it was the 1st Minnesota Regiment in the Civil War, they said, "You see that rebel flag out there?" And they said, "Yep." I said, "Go take that flag." And these 900 guys, 700 guys, something like that, charged into 20, 30,000 charging rebels, and they took, I don't know, 80% casualties or something. But, you know, it wasn't like a kamikaze mission. Those were desperate odds and horrible casualties, but it wasn't like you are going to go out there and you are not coming back. There's a difference, I think, between those two things, and I'm very, very proud of the fact that we don't send our people on suicide missions. We send volunteers on long shot missions, and that's necessary. But anyway, small distinction, but it's important to me. Carlton Hines wants to know, hot or not, Angelina Jolie? First of all, yes, definitely. Second, of all the movie stars out there, I have a special respect for her, and especially after the double mastectomy thing. She is, look, I really can't get into too much of this actually, because some of this is kind of personal, but Angelina Jolie is actually a real person, and and not just a real person. She's a really good person, I think, a really good person. For somebody like that, I think about that for a minute. You know, for any woman, the double mastectomy is just devastating, and for a sex symbol, it's her livelihood on some level, and furthermore, to be public about it. To be that public about it in order to help other people, you know, deal with it and to help encourage other people to at least look at the risk of breast cancer is tremendous heroism, tremendous heroism. And I have always found her to be extraordinarily talented and really gorgeous. And the picture of her in that first in that bodysuit for the first of the Tomb Raiders thing is just like, oh my God. But you're just gonna have to take my word for this when I tell you that that she is a real special person, a really unique person, a person who really does love this country, and not your run of the mill kind of celebrity. So I have a very fond place in my heart for Angelina Jolie. I think she's really exceptional. I can't really go into too much more detail than that. Final question. Tonight is from Michael Burke, and it's like, why do you avoid religion? The last episode was the personal questions episode, and I talked about my religious beliefs in that, so I'll just refer you to episode 31, which is on YouTube now. It's at the very end. But the reason I don't talk about religion much is because I don't need to. The issues that I talk about are issues that basically I don't need to divide people along religious lines. You can say that's not fair. I've always acknowledged that that the essence of conservatism is not only Judeo-Christian morality, but basically it's a Christian nation founded on Christian values, and there's no question really about that. But we're dealing with practical problems here, and we have to make the largest coalition we can. That means that the problems I don't talk about religion because I don't talk about religious issues. When I talk about freedom, that's not a religious issue. It's a freedom issue. And I don't see any reason to divide people up. And you can say, well, that's not dividing people up, but it is, because if you start bringing religion into the issue, you lose people who are pro-freedom and who are not religious at all. You lose people who are pro-freedom or not Christian. And if you really get down to it, you can even divide the Protestant camp up, the Christian camp up. You know, you can say, well, Catholics are, got this problem, and Mormons have this problem, and so on, and you can talk that religion, lose those people. And then if it turns out that you happen to be an Episcopalian, then the Baptists are kind of snake-handling lunatics, and the Lutherans are, cold-blooded, Norwegians, and I don't see any point of it. I don't talk about religion because I don't talk about religious subjects. The issue of my personal religion I brought up in that last episode, and that was 25 minutes, so I'm not going to do it again here. But suffice it to say that my position is continually evolving, if you'll pardon the expression. So it's 2 hours right on the nose. 2 hours and 3 minutes. I was going to do our special word of the day thing, but we just don't have time to do it, rush through it. So I'll keep that for next time. But at 2 hours is about time, I think, to call it a day. Anyway, the Stratosphere Lounge episode number 32 has come to a close, and I have to say this is probably the most well-produced episode we've done. I like the lighting, I like the microphone stand, I like the fact that I had myself prepared, I had some time, I got the questions done, and we didn't have any ads. Didn't see any pop-up ads this time. I'm going to look into that some more. Maybe I can make that happen and pay them to go away. Until then, as always, I just want to close, as I always do, by thanking you very much for all of your support and all of your feedback and stuff on the website, and all of the messages. I don't get to answer all of them, and sometimes I don't even get to see all of them, but the ones I do, I'm there a lot, and it means a lot to me. So I'm there all the time. I can't tell how much it means to me, all your feedback on Facebook and elsewhere. And as always, all the fantastic luxuries and stuff I enjoy is all a result of your support, and I just want to thank you for it. So that's it for episode 32 of the Stratosphere Lounge. I don't see any reason. Let me conduct a quick search of my iCalendar here using my bitchin' Mac Pro here. Where are we? Yeah, I'll be in town next week. So barring some sort of strange problem, we'll see you next week for episode 33. But that's episode 32 of the Stratosphere Lounge. Thanks very much for joining us. It's always a pleasure, and we'll see you next time.